So, welcome to the podcast, Bill. We're really excited to have you on today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right, so we've got a little tradition here at blockchain.com. And the first question we always ask every guest is way back in the day, how did you earn your first buck, your first pound or euro when you were a young adult getting into the world?
Well, as an American, it was definitely a buck and not a euro or a pound. I guess when I was growing up, I actually worked doing construction with my dad. He would fix up old houses, and so I would go in and help do demo work and clean them up and all that simple labor that you could get teenagers to do. That's how I made my first buck.
Nice. All right, cool. So, fast forward a little bit. How did you first learn about crypto and what was sort of your introduction to that?
Well, I am probably one of the very few people out there who was introduced to crypto because he loved hashing functions.
Ah, okay.
So I was actually doing a hash algorithm analysis for a project we were working on, and somebody told me about that. Some other people were using hashing to make a new currency. Obviously Bitcoin back in this is 2011 or so. And so, I looked into it and thought it was interesting. Later, as Bitcoin got a little bit bigger, and especially once Ethereum came out, and I really understood all the things that this blockchain could be used for besides just currency, I just became more and more interested. I was teaching at the University of Pittsburgh and was teaching in the computer science department. And eventually, a few years ago, decided I needed to get into the industry. I was just spending more and more of my time, working on looking into blockchain stuff. And so, 3.5 years ago, I left academia and started working at Web3 Foundation.
Awesome. Well, welcome aboard. So I have a little history in Pennsylvania too. I lived in Westchester, not too far from Pittsburgh, for about 4 years. So that's a good little connection. All right, cool. So tell us a little bit about your role within the Polkadot community now. So you left academia, and how did you land at Polkadot?
I found a job offer for a technical educator, and as somebody who was teaching computer science and was interested in blockchain, that seemed very much the role for me. Web3 Foundation, what we do is we're a foundation. We're not an engineering firm, but we're helping to build Polkadot as well as other technologies for the decentralized web. So what I ended up doing here, after some time of working in different roles, I now am head of education and grants. So I run a few different teams that I like to think of as how we interact with the ecosystem. So our grants program. So we have a very large grants program for people looking to develop software for Polkadot. The support team. So a key differentiator, I think, for our for Polkadot is that we do have a place where you can you ask for help from the actual team. So support if you're having issues. We'll help you out. And technical education. You make different classes. We keep the Polkadot wiki up to date. We make tutorials, etc. So basically, my goal is to make it as easy as possible for users to understand and use and develop on the Polkadot ecosystem.
Got it. Well, I can see how the background in education has nicely transitioned to this new role. Cool. All right. So let's go back in time a little bit. Talk to us about sort of the origin of Polkadot, who is involved in creating that, and a little bit about the time frame for that, for the original launch.
Sure. So I think really Polkadot. The story of Polkadot really starts with the creation of Ethereum. Gav Wood was one of the co-founders of Ethereum and the CTO of Ethereum Foundation. And as Ethereum progressed, I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact year, 2015, 2016, Gavin Wood left the Ethereum ecosystem to start making Polkadot, which in his mind and in mine as well, solves a lot of the issues that the current Ethereum system has. So it was sort of built as another iteration. You can almost think of that solves a lot of the problems. Along with Robert Habermeyer and Peter Chaban, They started Web3 Foundation, started funding the Parity, Gav's company, to start building Polkadot. And yeah, that was in 2017. In 2018, Web3 Foundation became an official Swiss Stiftung, as it's called, basically a foundation. And we have been funding the develop of Polkadot ever since.
So I remember I've known Gavin for quite a while. He used to saunter around in East London, and I'd catch up with him in Shoreditch once in a while. So it's a pretty amazing origin story to have participated at the birth of the Ethereum protocol, taken some of those lessons, and then gone on to continue to build in a really interesting way, which is one of the key value propositions of Polkadot is actually to sort of sit in between a bunch of different blockchains, which we'll get to in a minute. So I guess that's a good opportunity to sort of define a bit about Polkadot itself. So, in your own words, if you're explaining this to someone new to crypto, what is Polkadot and what does it do? And as much as to the extent that you can sort of describe some scaffolding for it drew on this from Bitcoin, it drew on this from Ethereum, and now it's trying to do something a little bit different, just so that we can kind of do some comparisons there. I think that'd probably be helpful for the audience.
Sure. So I think that the key idea behind Polkadot is that it's what we call a L0. So if you think of a blockchain as an L1, you do have L2s that go on top of it. It is basically a meta platform for developing your own blockchain. So you can have these what we call parachains. We have a framework called Substrate for you to build your own blockchain that can be as specialized or not specialized as you want and as you need. So, Gav described it once as the biggest bet against blockchain maximalism, right? So the idea is not that there is one solution that will solve all problems. Some apps may want their own entire app chain. Some may want to just develop in Solidity. Some may want to use different languages. Some want to be for a very specific purpose, such as asset storage, for NFTs, for IoT, for social networking, whatever. Right? But it allows people to not only develop at the smart contract level, but rather to also be able to make their own blockchains, which can be as specialized as they need to be for their specific purpose.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. I know that Polkadot is especially popular with the technical community. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the, I would say, like product market fit that Polkadot is serving today. Can you give us some examples of popular applications or communities that have formed within the Polkadot ecosystem, and talk to us a little bit about why they're thriving on Polkadot?
Sure. So we have quite a few actually, that are that really sort of show off what you can do with Polkadot. So one of the ones I think is most interesting is Remark, which is an NFT standard, which is actually a non-smart contract based NFT system. And so that allows like some really incredible efficiency for minting, for receiving, for sending, all of this stuff. It's incredibly efficient. In fact, I think we had something like 13,000 Remark transactions in a single block, a single 6-second block on Polkadot, because they're very highly compressed, and the transaction fees are very small because it doesn't have to go through a smart contract. And so that sort of shows what's possible at the application level, building on Polkadot. What I think really differentiates it is when you look at these what we call parachains, right? If you are building an application with a blockchain along with it. So some of these that I think are very neat are Subsocial, which is a social networking site that's built on a blockchain. We have Crust, which is distributed storage on a blockchain. We have Robonomics, which is all about interacting with the real world, so IoT. And there's quite a few interesting things. Like I've taken pictures using a telescope in Chile, and then minted it as an NFT, automatically minted it as an NFT through the Robonomics parachain.
Cool. Were you in Viadelki by chance?
I'm sorry.
Were you in Viadelki taking those telescopic shots? There's a huge observatory there in the north of Chile that's pretty cool.
It was it's in the Atacama Desert, but
Oh, cool.
I'm not as familiar with Chilean geography perhaps as I should be, so I'm not sure
All good.
where
Well,
it
we
is.
can talk about or we can talk about astrology some other time.
Okay.
Um, okay, interesting. So I love hearing about those examples because they sort of demonstrate how we're using decentralization to solve what were previously centralized business models. Everything from decentralized social networks to decentralized storage, and the Polkadot blockchain sitting right at in the middle of all of that. So I guess from just to help us understand, so how big is a Web3 Foundation today? Like, what is sort of the administrative support, look like?
So Web3 Foundation is relatively small. We have 57 approximately employees. However, we don't do any of the engineering at Web3 Foundation. So there are actually several different teams that are building implementations of the Polkadot host, which is just the software that the Polkadot nodes run. The biggest by far is Parity, which has over 200 employees. But there are other companies such as Soromitsu and ChainSafe, and we are actively looking for others that can also build their own implementations, so that we're not dependent on one single implementation of the Polkadot host.
So if there's an entrepreneur listening to the podcast today that wants to work in Web3 and crypto and is seeking some technical and financial support, how do they go about requesting a grant or submitting a grant? And what are some things that would help them be successful in that process?
Sure. So if you go to grants.web3.foundation, and that's web the number 3.foundation, there's very detailed information about what we can provide, and also what we may not be able to provide, but know how to help you get. So, for instance, the Substrate Builders Program for people interested specifically in building interested in building parachains. There's a special team for that we can introduce you to. But I think that the key thing to know about submitting grants to us is that we are looking for technology that will help the ecosystem. And so that means that we very much are interested in technology, right? So we're looking to ensure that your team has the necessary has the skills, or we can help you find how to get the skills. Most projects are built in Rust, so sometimes that's a problem for teams. So we help them learn how to get this. But basically, just if you have an idea, we will work with you to get it. In fact, everything is done entirely in the open. It's all done through GitHub unless you ask for it to be private. So you can even look through previous grants and see what kinds of things they have done that perhaps you should add in your application. But we also don't just give you a thumbs up or thumbs down. We'll talk with you and explain, all right, well, we had some problems with this, or we think this milestone doesn't quite fit, et cetera. And we can talk with you to try to figure out something that works for all of us. We've given out over 400 grants, and we're really looking to give out grants, right? That's part of our role, and so we really do try to work with you and do it in an open and public manner as much as possible.
Sounds like a great partnership opportunity for anyone out there looking to dabble in the future of Web3. So thanks for sharing that, Bill. All right. So just to get back to some basics for our community, so we've had experts from Ethereum and Bitcoin on the podcast before that have talked a little bit about how Bitcoin come into circulation, talked a little bit about how the Ethereum proof of stake system is about to launch. So can you talk to us a little bit about how dots come into existence? So we know that the Bitcoin network uses a proof of work mining algorithm. We know that Ethereum is transitioning to proof of stake. So talk to us a little bit about how dots come into existence and compare maybe the economic systems of the Polkadot protocol to those familiar ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Sure. So Polkadot from the start has been a proof of stake system. It's been operating as proof of stake since May of 2020. And it uses something called nominated proof of stake, which means that in order to participate, you do not need to be running your own validator or block producer. As long as you have an account, you can take part in the system. So the economics are slightly different from both Bitcoin and Ethereum, in that compared to Bitcoin, DOT is inflationary, so that there is no cap on DOT. It is an inherently inflationary token, and in order to keep up with this inflation, you generally should be staking. Although there are other things such as participating in crowd loans or auctions for to allow these parachains to join the network that you can also participate in.
So the nominated proof of stake system is almost in some ways kind of more democratic in that it's more accessible and you don't need to have as much technical knowledge in order to actually stake some of your treasure.
Right. So currently, as long as you have 10 dot and you're willing to pay another very small amount in transaction fees, anyone can take part in the nomination process and deciding which validators can be added to the active set that is actually producing blocks. And I say this number, but we also have Kusama, which is actually has a much lower limit to participate. There's essentially no lower limit. It's 0.003 KSM, or I don't know the exact number, but it's very low, very small amount above zero, so that if you're interested in trying out staking, you actually can do that on our sister network Kusama very easily.
Cool, that's good to know. So we've learned that Bitcoin has a cap of 21 million, and that there's fewer of those ever coming into circulation, and that there's a halving event every 4 years that reduces the supply by 50%. So this is designed a little bit differently. What is the inflation schedule of Polkadot, and how does that get managed over time?
So inflation actually varies based on the percentage of the network that is staking.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic idea is we have an ideal staking percentage. That is, what we have determined, what our researchers have determined to be, a secure amount for staking the system. And if the staking varies too much from that, then the amount of rewards go down. So it's very difficult to predict exactly what the inflation rate will be, but it's approximately 10% annually. So as you can imagine, when validators produce blocks, as well as when they do other things such as produce uncle blocks or validate parachains, they get rewards. And so once an era, which is equal to 1 day, then the rewards go both to the validators and the nominators, those who are nominating those validators.
Okay, so we've got validators, nominators, there are collaters, and fishermen. Let's define these participants that are almost sort of like the arbiters in some ways of the economic integrity of Polkadot.
Yep. So validators are the block producers on the relay chain, which is the central chain of Polkadot. Nominators are those who put up DOT. They stake these validators, the ones that they trust, in order to produce blocks. And in so doing, they share rewards, right? So the validators and nominators share the rewards for, activities such as producing blocks, uncle blocks, and validating parachains. Collaters are kind of like the equivalent of validators on the parachains. So on the individual chains, they're going to have their own mechanisms for determining who is going to bundle blocks, and essentially, I'm glossing over a few technical details here, but essentially, bundling up the blocks and sending them to the relay chain validators to actually validate, to ensure that they are actually following the rules of that parachain, which are defined when the parachain first joins. Fishermen were originally an idea in the white paper, where you could essentially have extra nodes that were checking all of the validators to ensure that none of them were cheating by trying to give invalid blocks. However, these have essentially this role has essentially gone away and been taken over by validators. So validators act now as fishermen. All the validators are looking at each other. So our researchers actually determined that if the validators do it, then from a formal perspective, there was no difference in having extra nodes that could do it. The validators themselves could do it. So we don't really have a fisherman role anymore, even though that activity still takes place.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so validators, nominators, and collaters. Thank you. So those are the trifecta of support that basically maintains the integrity of the Polkadot community in blockchain and the parachains. Got it. And then they get rewarded with newly created dots. Okay, simple enough, I think.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So for those people that are out there that are looking for sort of adoption proof points, whether from the foundation's perspective or the research perspective, what are some things that are important metrics that we should be looking at on chain to sort of validate user adoption? Is it the percentage of transactions per second that are happening, the number of addresses used, the number of validators, nominators, and collaters? Like, what are the things you guys are interested in, like tracking longitudinally to show that there's like more and more activity happening on the Polkadot network?
So personally, and people can differ on this, but as a layer zero, we're looking for additional chains to join, right? These parachains that people can develop. So for me, working and thinking about things, from the Polkadot relay chain level, the most important indicator would be the number of parachains joining, right? The people and teams that want to build and have their own chains running on our network. And so far, we have I should have double checked the numbers, so I may have them slightly off. But on Kusama, which is our canary network, where we deploy code first before, and where a lot of other parachains deploy their code first before going to Polkadot, we have 39 parachains running right now. So to me, this has been a great indicator, right? That there are a lot of teams that are willing to build, spend the time to build, and are currently running projects on Kusama. And then on Polkadot, we have in the mid 20s. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
And has that number been growing and speeding up? So give us a little bit of sense of the momentum there, because what each one of those parachains represents is a lot of human effort, collaboration, teams building products and services for real world use cases. So is this year been better than 2021? How's that look?
So it's actually been relatively linear growth.
Okay.
And part of it is just the way the system works is that we have auctions to get these parachain slots, and so some things there's some like a sort of like a time limitation, or gatekeeping is not the right word, but it just there is something that kind of forces them to be sort of more linear.
Okay.
But we've been seeing we have not been seeing a slowdown. We are seeing actually a lot of teams, developing and wanting to build and make these parachains. And there will eventually be a limit of how many parachains can connect to the relay chain. However, our original estimate with this was about 100. We're now thinking it might be more like 200 with some optimization techniques. But we've been seeing the slow growth, or slow but steady growth, I guess you could say. We didn't honestly have a huge jump in 2021. I know there was a lot of activity in general in 2021, but blockchain development is a bit different than smart contract development, right? So while we are seeing a lot of smart contract projects running on top of these parachains, we're actually seeing a pretty consistent rate of growth, right? And we're also seeing a lot of projects that were running on Kusama. Now they've been testing for a while essentially, and now they're ready to move on to Polkadot. So that Kilt, one project, just announced yesterday that they felt that they were ready to move to Polkadot. So we have this sort of reservoir, right? On Kusama of projects that are tried out, and they're slowly as they develop, trickling over to Polkadot.
Got it. So basically a steady march of new parachains representing entire development projects, communities, filtering in and graduating from Kusama to the main relay network.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's the thing to remember. These parachains have their own ecosystems on top of them, like smart contracts and projects that are built on top of the individual parachains. So they're slow. Some of these started as solo chains. They're running entirely by themselves, and they've decided to come over to Polkadot. Some, were started on Kusama. But we're seeing, I think a good way of saying is this slow, steady increase as the teams have developed them and tested them fully.
Got it. And that also sounds like it's been deliberately designed that way to ensure the integrity of these projects, et cetera. So makes sense. All right, let's peer into the future. What are some things you're excited about? And maybe what do the next 6 to 12 months look like from the foundation's perspective? And what are some things that crypto enthusiasts and Polkadot supporters should be looking forward to?
So, I mean, from a very high level, as I mentioned, we're always getting new parachains coming online. Some of them are very interesting. Some that are just running on Kusama, and that will be moving up to Polkadot. I personally, I'm really interested in governance. We have a very well thought through governance system that I think is very different than a lot of other systems out there, and I think that if I'm going to just digress for a minute to explain why, but it's essentially self-reinforcing, right? So if, the entire code for a parachain or the relay chain is stored on that relay chain itself, on the blockchain, and thus can be modified by governance. And so we have self-executing governance. There's not some multi-sig where you're telling people to do things. It actually, if the dot holders vote for X, then X happens. And we are actually in the middle of a revamp of this to something called Governance V2, which we're removing almost any concept of a specialized role, and so it'll just be as directly democratic, I think, as you can get on a blockchain, with some special safeguards. So this is coming in the very near future. Something I think is this Governance V2 I think is very interesting and very democratic, and helping to decentralize the network. Another thing is staking. A sort of a common complaint is that staking on Polkadot might be more difficult or more complicated, I guess is a better way to say it, than on other networks. And we have something called nomination pools, which will allow you to more simply nominate validators, allow other people to decide which validators to nominate, and also would reduce the amount that you would need to nominate. So like right now it's 10 dot. We're hoping to get that down to 1 dot. So the simplification and the reduction in fees and minimums, I think, is going to be really interesting if you're interested in staking.
Okay, so we've got some really exciting things, it sounds like. So one of the things I've always liked a lot about the Polkadot project is the governance that is really controlled by the holders of DOT. And this is a direct relationship that essentially community users have with the future of the entire project. And I think that's one of the most novel and powerful things about DOT. So besides the governance V2 upgrade, the nomination pools to make it easier to stake, providing more access to people that want to continue to support Polkadot, and all the opportunities for future grants from the foundation. It sounds like things are looking quite bright. We're very excited to hear about these things. For community members that want to learn more about which parachains are being approved and moving from Kusana to the main relay network, where do we learn about that? What are the sort of the best places for people to get more information about what's happening and the progress that is occurring?
Sure. So, our main website, Polkadot.network, and its blog always has lots of good information. The subreddit, reddit.com/r/Polkadot. We have lots of information there. I post there and on my Twitter account and on Subsocial a daily Polkadot digest of what's happening in the Polkadot ecosystem every workday. So if you follow at Bill Laboon, or if you look at the Polkadot subreddit, you can see every day what's happening in Polkadot governance, in terms of talks, in terms of new communities, in terms of parachains. So lots of information every day. I mean, that's the great thing about Polkadot, is there is a lot happening on it. So I write quite a bit every morning with my morning coffee and send it out into the world.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So, in summary, if you want to keep up with what's happening on the Polkadot network, you can visit polkadot.network. Web3 Foundation and /grants is where you can go look into the grant program. And then definitely give Bill a follow on Twitter at Bill Laboon, and to keep up to date with all the latest things that are happening there. So if you're excited about what you heard today, you can buy, sell, swap, hold Polkadot right within your blockchain.com wallet. Remember, the blockchain.com wallet is the world's most popular self-custodial wallet in the world, and we'd love to have you give it a shot. I think it's pretty clear that Polkadot has a very exciting roadmap in future. And we'd love to have you on again, Bill, as the steady march toward the future of Web3 continues, and to get more updates from you and the hardworking team over at the Web3 Foundation.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right, thanks.